live. We are live. We are live. Okay. Well, welcome to our very improvised stream from Art Santa Monica, where Top Lab Barcelona, in this moment, has a week-long residency, and we are here basically every day from 11 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, doing different things. Live coding jam sessions, talks around all kinds of different topics. And
there's more people here.
There's some people with me in the room. There's somebody coming in right now. We're in a public museum. And yeah, tonight's topic originally was planned to be a roundtable of live coding language artisans, because one of the things about the Top Lab Barcelona community is not only that it's a very polyglot community, both in spoken and programming languages, there's also a lively culture of people developing their own languages, including myself. But the roundtable idea didn't turn out quite as well, because for one, the table I'm sitting on is rectangular, so that failed, and also some of our local language artisans had other commitments, or out of town, or in different countries and different geographic regions of the world. So it turned into more of a talk, and the talk turned into a stream, and the stream is what you're seeing right now. So the reason why I wanted to create this little roundtable, meetup, whatever you want to call it, is that we talk about a lot how to make languages on ICLCs and other occasions. We often talk about the technology behind it. We talk about language creation in the context of the discourse of art, and other different things, but I feel like it's things that often aren't talked about that much, is like the personal motivation for people to create languages, because beyond all arts discourse, beyond all discourse around live coding, how it fits into the world of digital art, every person who has created a live coding language probably had at some point some kind of personal journey behind it. I know very few people who learned live coding from childhood on like this, probably because it's still a relatively young art form, but in the end we arrived at a point where we wanted to create a live coding language. So I collected some statements from the community, which you see in the form of a little scrolling reel below me. On the left side you see the raw statements with some highlights I added, and on the right side you can see some extrapolations that I took from these little statements on what are the personal, emotional, less artistic maybe, or like less academic motivations for people to create live coding languages. So you can read them while I'm talking. You should have enough time to read every once in a while, and if not, you can revisit the stream and have a little look at them. But yeah, I find it interesting, because reasons are fairly varied. Like personally, I don't know how I ended up creating a live coding language. It was like I always was at odds with music theory, like never had a huge talent for composing in like traditional harmony theory, and I was looking for something else. So at some point I found Markov chains and probabilistic music making, and I wanted to create a little notation for that, and I found text-based interaction with the computer. It's a good way to do that because it can be a concise syntax and you can kind of develop your own little music theory, and you can create a syntax for your own little music theory. Or maybe you start creating the syntax and then you find out what the music theory behind it. Both are pretty much valid options. So in the end, I ended up creating Migra, which I've been using for quite a while now. But obviously, I'm not the only one creating live coding languages, and I'm not even an early live coding language creator or anything like that. There's a lot more people around. In fact, if you look at the GitHub page that is called Awesome Live Coding, there's a list of live coding languages, and I think it's about 100 languages there that people created over time. And so it must be kind of a worthwhile activity in and by itself to create live coding languages. And over the last couple of weeks, as I already said, I've collected some statements on the topic from people from the community. And I was happy to see some motivations that matched my own, or that I could very well understand, or were pretty similar to my own, like create your own little, or create a new music theory, or create a notation for a music theory beyond traditional Western music theory. Create language as some kind of second brain. Like, I always feel very connected to that argument, because in some or another sense, like, the language becomes an extension of your brain, of your art, of yourself at some point. You don't have to think about much anymore what you're typing, because it becomes fairly natural, which can also happen with a language that you haven't developed yourself, of course, but if you set up the basic roots for your language, then it might be easier for some. I also found it interesting, like, people create languages as an art project in itself, like that the language itself is a little work of art that stands on its own. And of course, the communities around languages, because a lot of people want to build a community around their language, or it just happens. Some people do it intentionally, some people just happen to create something popular, and some people present their stuff to many people, but in the end they're the only one using it, because maybe it's too weird for others. Who knows? Personally, I think rarely ever seen anyone using my own language except for myself. And honestly, I don't mind. It's just an interesting observation. Alfonso has a question.
I have a question.
I'm happy about that, because I'm running out of material.
What kind of, you said that this is kind of a music theory you're creating, apart from the regular music theory that, well, there's a bunch of them, no? So how would you say this theory of yours is about, no? What is about? Is similar to the one that we know, or how it works? How is it?
You mean my own?
Yeah, they make it as
Yes. It's hard to put in words. I mean, if I could easily put it in words, maybe I wouldn't need a language for the computer. But I would say my personal idea is that I'm always trying to find a good syntax, on the one hand that's very concise and expressive, but for, well, it's less about finding harmonies or well-sounding combinations of frequencies, but more about finding a good balance between novelty and familiarity. Like on the one hand, you have the side where you just create a random number generator, and it creates something very random. It becomes boring quite quickly. And on the other hand, you have super static, repetitive things that might also become boring. And for me, it's like I'm trying to create a theory around less repetitive sounds. So it's not like about creating repetitive patterns. It's more about creating something that doesn't overwhelm you with complete novelty, but also isn't repetitive. So you try to find the balance between between the novelty and the familiarity in a way that makes sense and that makes music worthwhile to listen to without being too repetitive. I said that many times.
Mhm.
I guess it's a good word to repeat, repetitive. So yeah, I guess that's one of the main quests that I want to work on with creating a live coding language. So, and I could return the question. I mean, you create your own stuff as well. So what's your theory around it?
I don't know. They say repetition legitimizes. No, in my case is it's different because I'm building simple stuff in the web, like ambient. So yes, might be repetitive, but it's not because I repeat things. In my case, it's because I put very long notes, so it's kind of a repetition in itself. But no, just asking about music theory. Yeah, it's difficult to combine the typical Western music theory or whatever with computers because it's not really implemented. I don't know the new language like Mercury or things like that. They really know how to implement Western music theory, harmony and all that kind of stuff. But most of the libraries that you can find about music or live coding is very difficult to think like a musician and you think like a developer, no? So it's you end up doing things like, in my case, ambient or I don't know, experiments, but they don't sound like music we all done by humans. But please continue with your.
I mean, that gave me a good idea. Like, for example, one thing about the theory that I often think about is what do I want my language not to be? Like, this can be something. On the webpage, I stated that there's no things that like scale completion. Like, you won't find anything that's called harmonic minor, or like whatever major scale. Many languages try to go into that direction and try to reflect and create concise abstractions for these kind of things because they sound beautiful to many people and there's nothing wrong with that. But personally, I'm always like trying to reduce that side of music. I'm often using just 4 or 5 notes over a long period of time, very little material, and try to find variations that work beyond the idea of a scale or beyond the idea of a chord. I rarely ever use more than 2 chords, I suppose, because it's just not a good way of thinking for me. So, or like a fun way of thinking. So that's reflected, I guess, in the language design that it has no facilities for that. Like, you can't. Most of the time when I write a bass line, I write the frequencies directly, and they're just like 55, 66, 99 or something like that. And somehow that works with other notes, with other samples. Some people say, okay, it sounds a bit rough in their ears, but for me it doesn't, because I'm really used to dissonance and things, so it sounds familiar to me. So I tend to do that more than writing a scale or writing pentatonic or anything like that. And as I said, like, other languages are very different about that. Other languages underline the process, for example, in a very different manner. If you think about esoteric languages like Orca, where it's like all about making the process visible. Like we have like little entities that send out sound events basically, and then there's a receiver somewhere, and if the receiver receives a certain event, it will just make a certain sound, and it's like way beyond the idea of like of sequencing in some way. Like it's follows a very different paradigm in its design. So I think the person who designed it might have had a different hope for their own language. But I don't want to put anything in their mind, of course. I don't know them, so I'm just hypothesizing here. So
I can ask
somebody has a question. Yes, yay.
I was thinking, I don't know if you said something or you already think about that, but then there's a difference when you make something for yourself and then when you think that someone else is going to use it or not. So I don't know if your idea is to share that with some other people, or that doesn't matter, or like what's the stage on that thing. And I don't know for the others, like I can understand that some other people doesn't need the software to be used for any other people. It can be just something that you need and then no one else. But at some point you put it there and you are like kind of expecting that people also use it or not. Like it says how to download it.
I think it happens sometimes organically, and I mean, from a motivational standpoint, like there's two statements in the reels that are on the contrary. Like there's the one by Felix, for example, who created Kabelsalat and who created Strudel, and both are the kind of the latest generation of languages that are like web native in some sense. Now they've kind of been designed with sharing them easily in mind. And Felix wrote in the statement that like he likes to see his language being used and abused and by other people and like being hacked and being being used like that, because that creates a deeper understanding, as far as I understand his statement. Like because that's okay, you find ways that others others find ways to use your language that you wouldn't have thought of. So while on the other side of the spectrum, if you see, for example, a statement by Kate, who said that a lot of her languages, and if you've seen her, I've seen her play at different ICLCs, and it's often like very focused, very very singular creations. And as she said, like they are created without influences by other users in mind. Like they're created as individual works of art. So both positions, I would say, are legit. And myself, like, honestly, I don't care that much. I mean, I like to share my language, but I also don't want to hold back on idiosyncrasies. Like, if I want to name functions in a weird way that only makes sense for me and that are just my personal inside jokes, then why shouldn't I? Like, that's why I can do this kind of things. No, like that's why language creation is a nice way of expression, because you don't have to hold back. Like if somebody else wants to use it, they sure can. Like I'm not keeping it a secret, but I'm also not going to be like, somebody tells me, I don't understand why your function is called apple and pear and not like apply and whatever, then yeah, because I like it that way. And I guess it's a good position to be kind of a later developer of a live coding language. I don't know, maybe. On the other hand, if you look at title functions, like I still don't know what squiz means, or others like brack, or so in the end it's always a bit of a a bit of a game. There's few languages were so straightforward in the namings of functions that you would think like, okay, they're completely designed with readability by other people in mind. I mean, Timo often says that Mercury was really designed with the idea to make it really easy to learn, or also Sonic Pi in a way that the idea behind this was to create a community and to document it very well and to make it understandable as possible. So that's the motivation behind it. Then it might also show, but yeah, I guess there's no unique or no golden standard. So.
Yeah, I have a question. I heard some of your music done with Megra, and I have a curiosity because I heard a bunch of songs like they always go to this theme that I would call animals.
Okay.
Can you tell me why you're so fond of animal noises and
I mean, I can tell you, but it has nothing to do with live coding languages, so it's a bit of an off-topic thing. Or no, it's not true. It does have something to do with live coding languages, because I always often say that my personal inspiration in music is the soundscape that I grew up in. So it was kind of interesting in the sense that on the one hand you had the post-industrial part of Germany with some leftover industry that would make great sounds, like trains braking on the tracks, or there was a scrapyard with a metal crane magnet crane that would pick up metal and dump it on another pile of metal and would make some interesting soundscapes. But on the other hand, it was 2 kilometers or 1 kilometer away, and I was living basically in the forest, so you had the mix of forest sounds and industrial sounds, and they had the quality that they were predictable in a way, because once a train comes in, what will more or less the sound will be. But they are also unpredictable because you don't know the timetable of the train by heart. So it's kind of the same balance of predictable sounds and unpredictable sounds and natural sounds and industrial sounds. That in some sense is the idea that maybe I can create Markov chains with Migra that create a similar effect. So there's the bridge to live coding languages and my love for nature sounds to use in soundscape composition and things like that. And also maybe a reason why sound that's organized in a different way than Western music is interesting, because it's more about the textures and how they're organized. So
I have another question. I have another question.
Yes.
And this is maybe not only for you. Also, I see some people in that video thing that also build some software things. And you behind this thing. I have maybe a concern about the live coding. It's not a concern, but it's something that is happening and has been happening for some time. That some people most of the people is using the same languages to make live coding, and it's getting popular, live coding, because of Tidal and Strudel and Hydra maybe.
So you mean live coding as a general art form and music form, or a special language?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, let's continue.
I mean, what I mean is that a lot of people enters to live coding thanks to those languages.
Yes.
And then for some people now, live coding is those languages and nothing else.
Okay.
So what do you think about that? Do we have to do something about it, or is it is what it is, or are you trying to make like a union or other live coder?
I don't know.
I'm not doing anything, but I'm just curious.
Well, I don't know. I guess the live coding community in general is very. This is like the whole idea of live coding community is that you have the community. That the community is kind of, in many ways, a very important thing. So I don't think that I have any power on that, and I don't want to have any power on that. But on the other hand, personally, I'm always on the side. I prefer people using and like failing with things they created maybe half an hour before their show, and if I would create if I curate events, which I don't do that often, but like if I do, then I would probably have a certain bias towards the raw and unpolished, and would rather see somebody work with a prototype language than deliver a very polished set in a well-designed, or in a very mature language environment. But also, I'm not sure if it seems like it, that there's the popular languages and people get into Algorave as their main contact with live coding, and a lot of live coding languages are geared towards creating rhythmical music, like starting with tidal cycles and continuing with now Strudel, which is a similar, different syntax for a similar paradigm. But on the other hand, if you look at the awesome live coding list in GitHub, it's still growing. It's not like people stop developing languages, and it's like, especially now that with the web and it becomes easier and easier to share languages, and there's newer languages that gain some popularity. I mean, for example, recently Mercury is becoming probably a bit more popular because it's really new language. No, it's not that old yet. So I think there is still room for new designs and new ideas to become popular, and especially if you continue also treating language design as an important part of the live coding community. And like a lot of people say, like also in the statements that I collected, that expression, the freedom of expression, like of artistic expression, is an important motivation to create live coding languages. So I think people will continue doing that, whether it's in the form of creating little libraries to hack websites, or to create choreographies, or to make algorithms. So I don't think we are at the end yet of that. And okay, if the popularity of the live coding grows, then of course there will be at some point maybe people who do super polished stuff in stable languages and stop embracing the error. Who knows? But I don't think it will be a while before that becomes.
Yeah, here Timo says, should every live coder create their own language dialect at some point? And then Roger says, I think it's not our problem, it's theirs. And then Timo, no, and then Roger says to Timo, I don't think they should, but I think they could, and I wish they would. Yeah. I'm just
interesting. That's a question.
saying the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's of course, it takes let's say, commitment. It's like programming is still an unsolved topic to a point where not. If you know how to make music with a live coding language, it doesn't automatically mean you learn how to modify or extend it. But in the end, we can think about what does creating a language mean. You don't have to create your language from scratch. You can also just make some abstraction in a library, and but I think, it kind of goes back to what you said before, that live coding developed out of the idea that that you think outside of the box. Like, I don't know, I remember one of the early papers on live coding, I think it was by Alex McLean, where he said like hacking Perl in nightclubs, which to us nowadays as part of the live coding community seems, yeah, okay, we use live coding language in a nightclub, but to the majority of the population that's still like something that those two things don't quite fit together, that you think of a nightclub and then somebody using a laptop to write code there. So so I think if it stops at some point to incentivize people to think outside of the box and to think about, okay, how would they create their language, how do they think about music, how do they put things together in a way that don't fit on the surface, then I think we are still far. My personal estimate is that we are still very far away from that, because if live coding becomes so common as Ableton Live or other DAWs that people use, then we would have come a long way.
We will do something else.
Anyway.
¿Preguntas?
I can continue.
Anybody in the comments, please say something in the comments.
Says they're just chatting there.
Oh, okay. Well, say. Yeah.
I was. No, my other question was, then you have, because I think you met before once with more people, like more developers and things. And then you have this thing with the idea of making more regular, or what's the idea? Or do you have like an organization?
No, I mean there was an idea to create a cantina-like format, like we had for the on-the-fly cantinas. We had one meeting, and it seems to be, well, as always, a question of time and energy. And I hope we can continue it at some point.
Yeah.
Right now it's a little bit dormant. But who knows?
Roger is asking, is Silence also a live coding language? But
Is what?
also a live coding language, but I don't think you have to answer that.
Cantina. It's a good name.
Yeah, I don't have any. Let's be creative. Roger has a question for me and for anyone else. Why don't you do your own live coding language?
I don't have a skills. Yeah, I think that's it for me. The barrier is the skill and the time that it takes to learn the skill, and like the level. I think a lot of people who make languages underestimate their own expertise, like the length of time and the depth of what they know about programming in general and in a specific domain. It's like unfathomable to those of us who don't live and breathe code. Like, I'm a baby learning to walk with tidal cycles, which is a high level, basic scripting. And so the idea of somehow transferring that knowledge into, like, I wouldn't even know where to begin to conceptualize, I can't read half the programming, 99% of the programming languages that I read or that I look at. So how would I conceptualize something else? I don't know how to use what's already made, and I don't understand it, You also
Yeah, I was thinking on that also, like, but we don't have to also, no? It's
No,
like,
of course.
just because. I mean, I like what some other people think and their ideas.
Yeah.
So I have other skills, so I don't know, I want to make music at the end.
For sure.
And then I'm sure you too, but maybe
Yes, I like to make music as well. But I also think like in some sense it's an art form of its own, and
What I do is to create my own synthesis in Supercollider because I think it's very, you can use it in a very wide way. So for me, it's just finding the syntax. It fits best for the type of work I want to develop. It's not creating a language, but it's creating, it's finding or creating how to express or
Yeah.
the syntax.
Mhm.
Yes.
But-
because I realize you can, at least in Supercollider, you can write on same whatever. I don't know.
It's like you making shortcuts?
Shortcuts or
Abstractions.
different. So also try to how to try to synthesize and find the clearest and shortest, and because live code requires to be quick, let's say, no? And then to express the idea I want to communicate.
I think for me, the idea of making shortcuts or abstractions or whatever with something like Tidal, I know people do, but there's so much about this language that I don't know, that half the time I imagine that the thing already exists and I just don't know it's there or don't know how to use it. So I would never start to write something new until I exhausted what was available, and then was really sure that it doesn't already exist, or that like whatever there is, I'm using it correctly, and this is truly a limitation. You know, that would be where I would start to think about, like, until I find something that I want to do that I can't do with what I have, and maybe there will be a someday that happens, but for now I'm very satisfied to explore what Tidal can do, and just that exploration is enough creativity for me in that tool. I mean, I've built stuff in Max, which I don't think is, I don't know, does that fit in the discussion? Like
Of course.
writing your own
I mean,
patches
we-
and stuff like that? But
I mean,
Yeah, what is
personally-
a live coding language?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it comes up in the
Patches
real, like
necessary.
like creating abstractions in Supercollider is already, like, you don't have to write your own parser, your own editor, your own interpreter. Like, you could argue that just thinking about how you want your language to look and feel is already language creation. Like, it's so. Like, domain-specific languages, most domain-specific languages are embedded domain-specific
Timo says Maxi's
language.
program.
Huh?
Timo says Maxi's program.
It's definitely programming, yeah, of course.
But it's not necessarily live coding. It's problem solving, and it's like you're conceiving
Sure.
of a system and a
Of course, yes.
formal rule set and all of those things. But it's not necessarily a language that would be then used by. You know what I mean? Like, it's programming, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
not
using
like
a
a-
language, but it's not writing a language.
Yeah, because that's a different thing actually. You are programming and then you are live coding with that. I don't know. You were live coding with Strudel. That's live coding. That's not programming. That's
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
There's
I
a
think there's
difference
like-
between programming and writing programming
I'm a live
language.
coder. I'm not a
Yeah.
programmer.
Right.
But there's no, like, it's a spectrum. It's not like there's the one or the other.
No.
Like, you can create live coding abstractions live. You can live coding languages. Like, it's a whole spectrum from just creating a language from scratch to not extending the language at all and just use what is already there. So it's not like, and there's no, to me personally, I would say there's no one right way to do it. No? Like it is. And some people also said in the statements that like, yeah, they create their own language and they spend more time on thinking about the language than they spend on using it. And that's something that resonates with me because I do that as well. But on the other hand, I have to say, like, I find it that's again like a very personal thing. I'm not the most creative musician in the sense that I can't come up with something every day to say like, okay, now I'm being creative. Sometimes it's just you can focus on something else. You can focus on developing languages, and you're still doing something, working on your art practice, solving problems without thinking, okay, what kind of music do I have to make today to be a creative person or anything like that. So, I mean, that's like, to me, that's actually a good thing, that I can like spend time on just not thinking about the music itself, but like more on how to make the music and then turn that into a syntax. So, yeah, to me that's an advantage of creating live coding languages, but I guess everybody finds their own balance, and that's all legit.
Yeah. I was before thinking that, yeah, they're chatting.
Okay. Yeah.
But then there's something that I was thinking, that at some point Timo was saying, yeah, but if Lina creates, or I don't know, it wasn't like that, but it wasn't like, if I create my own language, then I won't have more Mercury because I'm doing my own stuff. So it was like a joke, but I think it's kind of the thing that I really think I'm helping solving things with others, so we can create that together in a way.
Of course, I mean that's the community aspect.
That's how Tidal is so amazing
Yeah,
these
of
days,
course.
because there's a lot of people contributing. It's not just
And like some people also mentioned, like Harmonics wrote that, like, yeah, we're mostly contributing language to languages through documentation. And I mean, it's like, of course, the entire community aspect, like everybody contributes through using, through teaching, through documenting. I mean, in Barcelona there's Joan who wrote documentations for Punctual and tutorials, and like was on the teaching side.
Oh yeah, exactly.
For example, and like of course all of this is like contributing to the environment, to the universe of live coding languages, and it's all valuable contributions in a sense. No, of course. Well, I mean, I don't. As a disclaimer, I'm just rambling. I'm not trying to put anything into anybody's. I'm mostly hypothesizing, and like if anybody disagrees with me at some point, then that's all my personal statements here. So yeah, this I don't think there's one true path, and that's the great thing about live coding, and that's to me how we end up here in Barcelona with such an amazing community. Like I remember one of my favorite algorithms in Barcelona was like 20 people, everyone had 20 minutes, and it was at least 10 languages, and I really like that as an idea, like language diversity.
Language diversity. That's not a thing.
Anyway, I think we are nearly at the end of our time. No? Let's sit till 8. This,
And you're going to demonstrate?
what? No.
You have to pay for that. Okay.
Okay, come on.
Say goodbye. Corten, acción.
Still alive. Still alive. What do we do? There's another question here. Wait, we're not done yet.
Oh, we're not done yet. Okay. Well,
What do we do with the language? The languages that are now dead. Roger has a suggestion. It says a museum.
I mean, we already have languages in a museum outside Alfonso documented our screenshots down there, out there. But I think I would say the good thing is that most languages are open source, so it's not like in old-fashioned electronic music where you have stuff stored on some medium that doesn't exist anymore. So in that sense, maybe live coding languages might be historical, but they're not necessarily dead in the sense that nobody could ever use them again. So I don't know. I feel like it can be a more lively history than fixed media electronic music, or like video art, where you have something on a U-matic video cassette that, like, for a U-matic player that I have seen once in my life, maybe. So, I guess in live coding languages, that's a bit different. No?
Case closed.
Case closed.
I think they are not dead, no? But the syntax is dead, no? The nice thing is you can grasp the syntax and the grammar.
Mm-hmm. True.
And maybe it's not like the old hardware that it was difficult to implement because you have to build it. Here is easier, maybe, or not, to re-implement the languages, no? Because if they are open source, you know the syntax and you know the grammar.
You
So
can study.
the answer is they are not dead, actually.
They just live
they are
on in a
not in
different
use.
form.
They're
Yeah, they're
Is
just
So
Latin
it's-
dead? Is Greek dead?
It's what then?
People say that, but it depends on whether you believe them or not.
It's what then?
Latin. Latin
Or
is
Greek.
dead, Latin?
Oh, well,
Greek, no, for sure. No.
Or ancient Greek,
Okay.
maybe, but we still study it and learn from it.
Anyways, I think we can.
okay, let's stop here. Before it becomes too awkward. Are we offline?
No.